All right. So, good evening, everyone. This is Prekshit Satyarthi, and welcome to Portrait Photography Workshop. So, am I audible or not? So, just anyone can comment if my voice is breaking or anything. Am I audible? We'll be starting shortly. All right. Okay, cool. All right, then we'll be starting now. So, welcome, guys, to Portrait Photography Workshop. For those who don't know me, my name is Prekshit Satyarthi. I'm an engineering student from MIT Manipal, and I started photography around like in 9th or 10th or so. I think I started my photography journey mainly through what my dad got a camera, a DSLR basically, that was a Nikon D3100, which I think it's now not being manufactured right now. So yeah, that was my first cam. And I used to click pictures when we used to go for vacations and everything. And, in the coming years, 11, 12, I started developing interest to portraits. So started clicking during events, in college events, and different kind of events, weddings. And after that, like after 12th, I think I started working under a professional in Mumbai to learn more about fashion photography as such, and then from there on I developed more and more interest into portraits, mainly fashion and high fashion and things like that. And then you know taught editing and everything on my own, attended workshops of different photographers, and all that different things which finally came together to this particular day which I'm clicking and posting my photos online right now. So in this particular workshop, I'll be mostly handling three aspects of my workflow, which I actually follow, and not just how to shoot and what all the tips, tricks, and all the drawbacks of shooting portraits, but actual the full planning which goes on from deciding the shoot to post processing the shoot. So today we'll be covering majorly three aspects of my workflow, which consist of everything actually. So first part is pre-planning. So all the planning and everything which goes on before you even touch the camera to click pictures. The second part is the day of the shoot, which is obviously about how to go out there and shoot the pictures. We'll be talking about tips, tricks, and everything about using natural light to shoot pictures, as well as using flash and multiple flash setups, using flash with natural light, and how to minimize the error which are usually caused. And then in post shoot we have your post processing, your selection of pictures. I won't be going into exact details of how and what exactly I edit my pictures though, but I'll be touching briefly on what all tools I generally use to post process the pictures, because you can't really cover post processing and everything clicking in one full workshop. So I'll be switching off my video right now, but the presentation will be on so that you will be able to view the PPT more clearly without any distractions though. So let's move ahead to the next slide. So the first part of our shoot is the pre-planning, which is like actually one of the vital part of your shoot, because the basic foundation of your shoot starts from your pre-planning which you do before the shoot. So there are few pointers and few things which you have to look into before you start your shoot. So it is very vital you do this pre-planning, because what I've seen for the past years that many photographers don't pre-plan their shoots but just go out there the very day. Like if some client or some model approaches you for a shoot, and then you just go out there and like, okay, fine, we'll do a shoot. They'll just choose a random place and just tell the model to choose an outfit and just go out there and click the pictures. So that's not how you create better picture than what I've seen lately and all the drive links you have sent. So you have to plan your shoots. You have to actually do your homework, research on what you want to shoot, what the clients want, and then proceed with the shoot. And this will help you in various aspects and to actually mold the path to completion of the shoot. So the first pointer in pre-planning is getting the concept or the theme of the shoot. So this is the most important thing and the base of your shoot, because if you don't have a concept or any theme or particular outfit you want to capture, you won't go ahead with your shoot. You can't really just go out without having any concept or a theme and just go out there and shoot randomly, because then your pictures will be very haphazard and there won't be any particular common point in your set of pictures. So like for an example, this kind of shoot which I did is, this is the shoot which I did for showing the mainly the dancer kind of form, and basically I wanted to incorporate the surreal nature with your Indian dancing postures. So that's why here we use the landscape, which are these huge rocks, and used a longer focal length than usual to create that depth, so that the dancer will be looking as big as the rocks and the sun which is behind the model, as you can see on the right hand side. So that's basically your long focal length shot, which you can see, I think that was shot in 240 mm. So that's how you think of a concept of a shoot, and if you have a concept of a shoot, then you can develop on more and more pictures. So that's how you get a common point between these two pictures. So this is the importance of concept or theme. So like you can actually choose any concept or theme, be it an particular outfit you want to capture, or be it some mood, or maybe drama or any emotion you want to capture. So you have that idea in your mind, and after that, when you have that idea in your mind, then you go to the next step, which is mood boards. So now the mood board helps you create the environment which you want to actually click those pictures. So the role of creating a mood board here, you can actually create a collage or make a PPT or anything which you like, or a Word file which you can actually share with your model, so that even she gets to know what you are going through and what you want to capture and what all she has to do on her part. So these mood boards contains pictures which will have accessories, which will have relevant outfits which you want to capture, and the different poses, because I've heard a lot of questions regarding what poses do you want, how do you choose the poses, how do you tell the model to choose the poses, because all quite a lot of them are beginners, they don't know how to pose. So having relevant pictures or just reference pictures in your mood board and which sharing them with your models gives her an idea what kind of poses are you looking for. So by doing that, you can actually have an idea, okay, so this kind of background we need, this kind of location we need, this kind of outfit we need, and these are the reference pictures which you can give to your model to show, okay, these are the poses which I want. So similarly, this is a country girl kind of mood board which I made. So you don't have to exactly copy what the pictures are, but take few elements from the picture and use it in your photo and give your own touch to make the picture your own and just not blatantly copy the picture, right? So like in this we use the hat as an element, and then instead of a rustic background I used a little green dull background which was available to me at that time, and then I created this kind of picture and not exactly the same, and accordingly you just see the same. So that's why do create a mood boards or a ppt or a word file to help you create more ideas, more artistic ideas and everything. And the next part of your pre-planning comes the scouting of location. A location is also a very important point of your shoot, because if the location is not right, the photos might not come as good as it can be. And you have to actually, if you find a appropriate location, do go a day or two beforehand to see what are the lighting condition are of the particular environment, how the light is falling, so that you can think and imagine of the shots you want to take on the day of the shoot, which will help you speed up the process and not think at that moment about what all kind of shoot or shots do you want to take. So, and obviously, like in my particular, in the last picture of that country girl, we had a kind of a wild green lush environment, so we don't have to take any permissions or so. But there are few times where you have to shoot in a cafe or a restaurant where you have to take prior permissions. So if you want to shoot in those locations, do go beforehand and see to and get the permission from the appropriate manager or anyone. So that's location. Next comes the outfits and the accessories which you want for your particular shoot. So there are a lot of photographers who leave the outfit planning and the accessory planning to the models only and just give the theme, which is fine, but that's your shoot. So you can actually discuss what the outfit you want or what is available with her. You can rent it, borrow it, and then come up with a near to perfect outfit to go out with the theme. So if we look at the left hand photo, if I had chosen a more duller or more gray shade of the sari, then she wouldn't have been popping out of the picture or the main element wouldn't be visible. So choosing the right outfit is very important. Plus the accessories to define that picture, to give it a more better touch. So the appropriate accessories are also very necessary. Like in the middle picture, you have those old age Indian traditional kind of looks. So in this, the jewelry and heavy jewelry is very important. So you have to get hand on those jewelries and to show those jewelries in your picture itself. So if the jewelries wouldn't have been there, the photos would be very plain. So the outfit and the accessories accentuates your pictures and not make it rather dull. And it's not always ornaments or jewelries which I count as an accessories. Like in the top right, the right hand side picture, you the powder which we use, the backdrop which we use also count in accessories. So all the tools you have to use comes in your accessories for your shoot. So procuring it is your task and not anyone else's. So do that, and do get a second opinion about your outfits or accessories, because that's why we have creative directors, so that if it is not going out with your theme, they can always correct it and come to a much better opinion rather than your previous one, if it is not perfect, that is. The next thing which you require is relevant makeup, and which I've most people don't really do makeup or for the shoots, or don't, because they don't have appropriate personnel or the makeup equipments to do the makeup. But heavy makeup is not required every time for the shoots, but slight foundation or slight light makeup helps in hiding blemishes, which reduces your post processing work. This is very much ideal if you are doing a high fashion shoot or a shoot for some client or magazine or anything, where the details are the most important point of that particular picture. So you need to have a relevant theme. And you need to have proper makeup. So like the picture you have, if this makeup wouldn't have been there, the theme would just go totally wrong, that is. So you have to have some of the makeup which actually helps in the shoot, and it also have to be related to a particular theme. So for example, if you want to shoot a close-up shot of your particular model, and if we'll take female model in the for example, so if the person will be having a kajal or an eyeliner or anything in your eye, it will actually more be much more better than a picture with no makeup or no eyeliner or anything. So that covers your relevant makeup. The next thing is very important. This is communication, and communication is very important between your model and all the person who is included in your particular shoot, be it the person who is doing the makeup, or the person who's uh, or whoever is included in the particular shoot, especially a model, and discussing the timings of the shoot, the location of the shoot before the hand, so that you guys be on time for the shoot to start. And it makes the model more comfortable if you're shooting for the first time, because if the model's not comfortable, she won't be able to do her job, and you won't get the right poses or the expressions perfectly during your shoot. And this also includes the time during the shoot when you're clicking. So try having conversation with your model continuously while having your pictures taken, because if you are numb, then she won't be understanding what actually you need, or what all aspects of the pictures which are coming right or which is not. So you have to direct her about the poses which you require, and the expressions which you require, because you can see the picture which is coming out, not her or him. So you have to guide him or her or the model to towards the right direction, I'll say, and tell her what kind of poses you're looking for, the changes you have to make, and everything. And the next point is charger gear, which is obviously you'll know. Uh, I'm putting this on my slide because I've seen a lot of people who come to any workshop or the prior workshops I've taken without their charge gear, and they say forgot to charge and everything. So this is very important. This is very small detail, but yeah, if you don't have your charge gear, how can you shoot, right? So now this is the part where we go to the day of the shoot and actually clicking of the pictures. So far, if you have any questions or anything, just jot it down somewhere and we'll attend to all the questions at the end of the presentation. All right, so when you come for the day of the shoot, so we'll subdivide this topic into two parts. We'll first have the natural light shooting, and then we'll go into flash photography, which is a bit complicated than your natural light. So the first thing which you have to keep in mind in clicking any kind of picture is your framing. So the first rule of your framing is the rule of thirds. I am pretty sure everyone will must be knowing what rule of thirds is, but still I'm just gonna go through this particular rule so that everyone just get acquainted of it. So it's basically the main subject of your picture should be on your one third part of your frame, such as on the left hand side of the picture, the uh, the model is located on the one third side of the picture and not completely at the center. So it is vital to for few shots and not necessary to keep the model at the center, but it depends on the kind of pictures you're taking and wherever the model is looking. So in this case, in the black and white image, the model is looking towards the left. So there has to be space on her left hand side and not on the right hand side. So the space on the left hand side is known as your positive space, and the space where she is not looking, which is on her right, is known as the negative space. So try minimizing the negative space as much as you can, because that won't give a nice effect to the image, and it will just draw the attention towards the negative space and not the model which you want to show and what all the themes or what you want to exactly show in this picture. And but like if you'll see in the second picture, it is somewhat in the center because where the model is looking is not exactly to a left or a right, but somewhat towards the camera. So depending on where the model is looking, what her facial expression is, what her posture is, you set the framing of the picture. And this is a controversial rule and you don't have to follow it all the time, but for some pictures it is important to follow this rule. But most of the time you can choose what kind of framing do you want, but you just have to keep in mind not to cut off your the parts of her head or the part of her hands or wrists or elbows for the better framings. Right, so moving on, the next point is the shallow depth of field, which is mostly required to have your main subject into focus. Be it any kind of pictures, you want your main subject to be in focus, and the main attention should be going into these kind of pictures is the model itself. So you can use this one way is you can use shallow depth of field for it, or if you don't have that particular lens which goes below f2 or anything, you can use a longer zoom lens at a maximum focal length, which will blur the background almost evidently. So these are the two ways you can have the model in focus. Either use the maximum focal length of a lens or use a smaller aperture like f2, 2.8 or lower than that. So that's the two ways you can have it in focus. And so there are multiple advantages of having shallow depth of field. One is that if you have an object in foreground, such as in the leftmost picture here, so you can act the foreground one could be blurred, and if the foreground image is blurred, it will actually give a path and the my main focus of the person will go on the model itself and not anywhere else. So the foreground is blurred and the background is as well as blurred, so the main focus will go on the model itself. So that's one way, and another advantage is it'll give you different bokeh if you're shooting at night or any kind of cafe, or you have small different holes, so you'll have that beautiful bokeh effect which you can have with shallow depth of field. But there are times where you don't have to have shallow depth of field or low aperture as it is, but you want to have that keep in mind to have the things in slight things in focus, like the ornaments or everything. So you can pump up the aperture a bit, but keep in mind to have as less distraction as possible for those kind of pictures, to avoid having useless stuff in your frame and just what you want to capture. If you are increasing the aperture, and the stuff will be get in focus as well. The next point are leading lines. So these are the points like which I think you must have heard of, but I'm just repeating it again and telling you how you should apply it to your portrait images as it is, because leading lines are applied in landscapes and street photography, you name it and it goes there. So the main purpose of leading lines here is to get your attention towards the subject. So either you can use something apart from the model as a leading line, such as on the left side pictures, the wall lines are used as leading ones to get into the frame towards the model, which is the main focus. And in the second picture, it's the legs of the model which are acting as a leading line, which goes right to the face of the model, and the it gives more drama, and these kind of pictures gives more depth to the image rather than flat 2D kind of image. These kind of angles and everything gives more depth to the image and more drama to the image, right? Exactly. So similarly on the right side, the slab is acting as a leading line which goes into the image, and then there is your main subject. Moving on, then you have your color variation, which is basically your contrasting background and your outfit which you see. So either you can use two contrasting colors to give that different color variation effect, rather than just you know just as I said, if I had used in that dull sari instead of a bright sari, then the photo won't have that much of impact. So you can use opposite color or contrasting colors to give much more effect or impact on the viewers of these pictures. So such as black and white or black on red. But it's not always important. Such as, like, if you see on the rightmost picture, I have used a black backdrop and a black outfit, but the main aim is to have the attention towards the face. So according to your theme, you choose what kind of outfits you want. That's why we have all those pre-planning and everything, so that you plan your shoot so that you don't remember something, oh, I could have done that, but I didn't do it. So that gives you an advantage over these kind of mishaps. So uh, you use your outfits accordingly to get the most out of your image and what you want to convey through your image. And always try different perspectives. So instead of straight shots or like shots where the models are at the eye level of your eyepiece or your lens, you can actually get to a more top shots or use different kind of distractions or the outfit as a distraction. to get the most out of the pictures, such as you can go for a low angle shot to give more dimension or to get the action, or you want to show what kind of action she is doing. So if it's a walking action, you can go for a lower hand shot to give that depth and a much more three-dimensional effect. Or you can use the outfit of the model, such as the sari as well, for the foreground, which gives a different effect altogether. So that's up to you and your creativeness, how you utilize your props and your surrounding to get the picture. Alright. And this is, I've talked about eliminating negative space, and that includes what I've shown is the place where the model is looking is the positive space, this is the negative space. So the positive space should be always more than the negative space. You should always keep that in mind whenever you're shooting, because a lot of pictures have more of a negative space, such as in the middle picture there's a lot of head space above the model, which really ruins the picture and does not get the attention actually on the model. So if you remove that head space, such as I did on the right hand side of the picture, then you have actually reduced the negative space to give more attention towards the model. And then the post processing work and everything, you have to do it later on. So these are the parts where you have to get the framing and everything right, which includes in every kind of pictures, be it while natural shots or flash photography, anything. Now coming on to shooting the in natural light. So I'm sure that everyone must have shot something or the other in natural light, because that's the easiest way to get your portraits done. And but this is also tough to get mastery in, because the only source of light is the sun, and how you actually control the lights of the sun to get what kind of feel to your picture. So with the time of the day and the movement of the sun, you can get different lighting conditions. Like in the morning you can get diffuse light, as well as in the evening you have your golden hours, you have your blue hours. Different time gets you different color, different ambient temperatures of the light, different feel to your pictures. So what I recommend is try shooting at all those different times, and according to your theme, get your shots at that during that particular time. For example, I'll just go ahead with a few examples which of the shots I've taken, and to demonstrate what kind and what different type of lighting conditions which you can actually find. So in the first left hand side picture, that has been taken early in the morning around 8 or 9. So the sun has risen up, so it's not actually dawn, but the sun is behind the model, so there is very less shadow on her face, because the harsh light is not anyway reaching the model's face. So that's how you create diffused light without any artificial tool or anything. So timing is very important. So this gives a very beautiful and a very simple finish to your images, rather than the drama which you get from side lighting or anything. Even if you have harsh light somewhere, I'll tell you the ways to minimize this later on this presentation. The right hand side of the picture is basically when the sun has risen up a bit more and it's way above the horizon. So there is a tinge of harsh light on her shoulders, as you can see, but that was intentional because I wanted to have that lens flare which is been imparted on the right top corner. So there are ways you can actually capture these lens flare, because not all the time you can have these lens flares. So these lens flares are caused by either you have a hood on your lens, so the light diffracts from the hood and you get a lens flare, or your aperture is above f16 or so. So due to the very low aperture, uh, the light reflects from the blade and refracts from the blade and gives you these light leaks, which you call lens flare basically. So these are also an artistic way to create your pictures. And so but there are disadvantage of having these kind of pictures are few photographers they overexpose the highlights. So basically the all the uh, sky goes overexposed to create normal shadow viewing length for the model, but you only expose for the highlights and not for the shadows. You can always increase the shadows in post processing, but you can't really reduce the highlights to that extent for it to look good. So always expose for the highlights irrespective of the fact, unless and until you have your highlights portion cut down and there is only close shots and your only model is being viewed, such as on the left, you expose for the model as well, for the skin or for the shadowy area, not the highlights. The next part is your golden hour, which I'll say, and this is the time when people say that it is the ideal time to shoot portraits or any kind of pictures because it gives you that warm touch to your pictures, and instead of having that full warmth on your face it can be used with some shadows, with some backgrounds to give that different moody effect to your images, as if like in these pictures there is slight shadow on her face due to her fingers, due to the structure around her, which is giving a much more dramatic and moody feel rather than if you have your simple plain end pictures as it is. So, and again I'm saying always expose for the highlights. So I've given you the specs here. So I have only exposed for the sunlight which is falling on her face and not the shadow area behind her, because if I did so I couldn't have reduced the highlights to this extent, but I can always increase the shadows. So these is the golden hour field, so if you wait for more time the sun will be much more warmer in tone and you can get a whole new different range of pictures from these different timings of the day, such as this is almost at the sunset of the time and you can use the sun as your background, and instead of having the sun on your main sun at the behind your lens or somewhere else, you can have the sun right behind your model and act as an kind of a backdrop to give that halo effect and to give the structure to the hair. And this is the raw image on the left, so the shadows have not been increased that much, but obviously you can increase the shadow in Lightroom or any other app to get this picture much better feel actually. And while on the photos on the right, there are ways you can use the sun to create a particular spot on your frame to give that particular attention to that particular area or kind of drama, or you can have patterns on your pictures. So like we in the photos on the right, you can actually use part of the window pane or part of your doors or wherever the light's coming from to create this kind of pattern on her eyes. So this was the pattern which I just noticed, and then I placed my model accordingly so that this patch of light falls on her eyes to give more attention of the viewers to her eye rather than anything else. So you have to move your model, set up the location according to that, see where the light's falling, see what pattern is it making, and what all pattern do you require, and plan the shoot accordingly. Similarly, you can actually recreate the patterns on your own, similar to these photos, which you must have been seeing it on Instagram and everything. So these photos are created by the harsh sunlight. So these are the photos which does not require morning diffuse light, but actually harsh sunlight to give those different kind of pattern effects. So either you can use different instruments such as some utensils or your window pane or anything to create such effects. If you want more specific or precise effects, what I found out was you can actually have that effect, cut it on a black card, chart paper, or anything. Like if you want dots, punch in holes in a black chart paper and place it in your window pane. So the light falling will be of the dotted face, and just place a model there, and you'll have that particular effect. DIY. So that's an easy way if you don't have a sophisticated window pane or anything. You can always make your own pattern and shoot it. So that's how you do it, and that's a jugadu way, I'll say, to achieve these kind of portraits. And sorry, okay. So these pictures in which you can actually have used the sun in the background, and this is the part where the highlights are totally blown out, but the portion of highlights in comparison to the shadows is much more. So the main focus is on the model and not the highlights, and thus creating slight lens flares and everything due to the model's back or so. So that's how you get an eye for it, as much as you practice, as much as you click. Similarly, you can use harsh light to create much more dramatic effect and much more shadows as in the right picture. So these are like the various kind of pictures and various kind of lighting conditions which you can actually acquire in your daytime. You can have different kind of lighting, you can have different condition, different moods, adjust your lighting, create patterns, anything to your advantage, to your theme, and process it accordingly. In the evening you can always have those artificial lights and everything, or maybe restaurants or any cafes, and use their kind of lighting to show these kind of effects. And now there are some creative ways to achieve these pictures is incorporating landscape with creative style of portraits using long exposures to do this image, such as this image is center placed and not following the rule of thirds, but you have a foreground which is leading into the model, and then you have this fiery halo with the giving that dual tone kind of effect with the sky, which is the right side the sun was setting, and then there was this dusk time. So you can incorporate landscape with portraits and do much more creative stuff like this using long exposures or anything such as light painting, or you know anything actually. So that's up to you. Moving on to the common errors which you usually face are: when you're clicking the pictures, avoid having your background or any distractions around the head of the image, such as the net or the rod of the net is passing through her head during the frame. So avoid having the rods passing through her head. So maybe take a top shot or low angle shot to avoid those rods or anything distracting around her head. And the second thing is always expose for the highlights again. Like in the right hand side picture, they exposed for the faces, so the highlights is completely blown out. So avoid doing that, and try not shooting during harsh light, because such as in the left side of the pictures you can see harsh highlights on her elbows, hands, her shoulders, even on her nose and everything. Plus the background is also completely blown out. So avoid shooting during harsh light. If you don't have any choice but to shoot during your harsh light time, use a diffuser to reduce the intensity of the light. It can be either a white cloth or anything which is translucent so that the light could pass through but decrease the opacity of it. And try avoiding compact shots as it is. Don't crop the pictures too much, don't take too tight shots. And then there is, don't use too much of distraction in the image, such as I've used a blue kind of a chunni or anything inside in front of the lens, which gave this useless blue kind of effect, which is not at all required. So try avoiding that. But on the right hand side pictures, use the kind of environment to give slight distraction and slight out of focus shadowy effect. So on the right side, and how to minimize these errors. So finally, always double check the framing, always expose for the highlights, use tree shade or diffuser to cut off the harsh light, and if there are unnecessary distractions, try removing it during the framing of the shots, or if you can do in Photoshop and post processing, and try to utilize the surrounding elements in the pictures, because they can give much more depth to the image and much more different kind of shots you can take. Be at the location on time because you don't want to miss the light which you want to actually capture. And if you have a shadowy region, use reflectors to fill in the shadow region. Reflectors are basically anything which reflects the light. So either you can use cardboards, white cardboards, or any reflective surfaces as aluminum foil or anything. Just place it on a piece of cardboard, the aluminum foil or white cardboard, to reflect the lights. Now moving on to flash photography or studio photography as you say, which will be not familiar with a lot of you guys. So in flash photography you don't have any natural light, but the source of the light is the one thing which you have complete control. So by using those light control and the use of power of the light, you can create different environments with ease, different moody environment, different tones, different shades. You name it, you can create it. But you'll have to have a number of flashes to do so. It's not everything is not possible with single unit of flash, and it is not necessary to use the flash indoors. You can use the flash outdoors with uh, your natural light as well. So we'll go on to basic one light setup which you can see. So there is one light source, and then you have your backdrop which can be anything, and then you have your model, and if you want you can use a reflector to bounce off the light on the region where it's getting less light. Like all the light is falling on her left cheek and there is very less light on the light. So to compensate for the image, the lesser light, you use a reflector. to have much more a certain feel of the light so that it does not look completely dark. For flash photography, what you require is an external flash, which is advisable and not a camera flash because it is straight on to the model and you can't really control the direction of it nor the power of it. So the image on the left side are with the strobe, which actually you see in studios and everything, which have that yellow bulb in it. The right side flash are much more compact, which I use. It does not have a strobe, but it does the job actually, and it is easier to carry. So instead, if you don't have a flash, you can use LED video lights or ring light to give that similar effect. And to get the lights diffused because it's too much power and it acts as a harsh sunlight, you have to use a softbox such as this to diffuse the light on the model, otherwise it will be too harsh. And you can use reflectors or white cardboards to reflect the light wherever there is a shadowy region or the dark region to compensate for the coming in light. This is one of the most basic one light setup which you can find. So the light is falling from the right hand side, and instead of having completely dark left cheek, he has placed a white cardboard on the left hand side to bounce off the remaining light onto her left cheek, so that there is an even, semi even kind of tone and gives that a little bit of drama and little bit of shadow, and it does not look two-dimensional image. So you can there are numerous ways you can use flash to actually control the shadow of your image, because if the light is falling there will be a shadow on the backdrop. So by placing the model little far from the backdrop or anything, you can minimize the shadows completely. Such as in this picture, there is a harsh shadow which you can see behind the model because the flash was on the top left hand side and the model was very close to the wall, so there was this harsh shadow on the background which I don't want, and it's a very tough task to remove it in Photoshop. So either you can do is you can just place the model away from the backdrop, which will remove the shadows completely. This works with natural light as well, such as this. In this, the model is away from the backdrop, so there is actually no shadow which is visible on the backdrop. So that's how you actually control your shadows and everything. And these shots are taken with a huge diffused flash, which will be around 1 meter or something. That's why there is such even lighting on her body. But you can always use a LED light or a ring light with a diffuser to get the similar effect. Similarly, there are certain kind of shots where you actually need that harsh shadow to give the drama, or where you require high fashion shots similar to this, where you purposely have the flash at maximum power or a high power and without a diffuser and the model close to the background to give the model to have a much more evident shadow, such as on the right hand side of the picture. So in this shot, I think we didn't use a diffuser and it was just a normal kind of flash to give that harsh light on her face, on her cheeks, which you can see right here and here. So there are different ways to use a flash. So if you start using a flash, you can always try. These are not LED lights and ring lights are not at all expensive. It's around 2K or 3K according to the intensity of the light. If you'll go to the flash which I use, the smaller one, it's around 6 to 7K, the starting manual range fund flashes, which is affordable. And you can create your softbox at home with cloth or anything, or the softbox you can buy, which is around 1K or 500 bucks, depending on the brand that is. The main advantage of using a flash is to keep the highlights as it is. So if I had to click this picture without a flash, I would have uh, a lot of if I would have to get the similar exposure on the face, I would be losing on the highlights which was on the back side. So it would have been overexposed and it would have been totally difficult to gain back that particular tone of the face and everything. So having a flash as a filler, you can actually control the highlights as well as the shadows. And uh, so the way you control the light is also very important. The direction of the light where you place the flash is also important. So you place the flash, or you place the flash, or you where the light is actually important. Such as if I've placed the flash on the top left hand side, the light is being falling on her back and on her back side of the face, and which is actually the negative space. So that is enhancing the area which is not at all required, and you don't want the viewers to pay attention to that side but onto the her frontal face and the powder which is flowing. So if I place my flash on the top right hand side, it will actually fall the lights on her hair, on her frontal body, which will give the particular depth, and it will increase the whiteness of the powder as well. And then after you post process it, you remove everything, you get these final images where you can see there is much more light on the right hand side to give much more effect to the powder rather than if it would have been on the left hand side. So this gives a bit more shadow, which gives more depth to the image rather than placing it right in front of the subject. And then there is another way, and the beautiful way, and to create colors using flashes, using colored gels, or you can use cellophane paper to use get the similar effect. Like you can use any kind of light source like a mobile torch or anything, put a cellophane paper in front of it to get the certain color, and just use to click this picture. Like if we have a single flash, you can use, like in the left hand side we use an orange cellophane paper or orange gel to create that orange kind of effect. On the right hand side they had multiple flashes with multiple different shades of gels to give different shades and different colored effect on the picture. So using gel is one of the creative ways. You can use gels with any kind of light source you want, be it a flash, your torches, your mobile torches, or any kind of LED lights to create this particular effect, because flashes or any other lights are neutral in tone. So you have to place a gel or anything to get that particular color effect. Now coming on to flashes with natural light. So flash with natural light is only used mainly for giving that filler effect on the face of the model or anywhere which there is scarcity of light. It is done to maintain the highlights of the backdrop as it is, such as in this image you can actually see the bouquet and everything which is on the backdrop, because the camera was exposed for only the backdrop to get those bouquets and everything on point, but not the model. So the model was added by a filler flash which lighten up the model's face. So that's how you create a balance between the natural light and the flash. So you have to actually keep on trying to get that particular balance, because it's very difficult to get those balance, both the highlights and the shadows perfectly. So this is a bit tricky, but if you get used to it, it's a lot easier to do it. So that's how I go about it. So first I expose my camera for the highlights, such as on the left side of the image, and then I add the power of the flash accordingly to give that particular filler light to the model, which will give you that particular final product. Similarly, in this picture, these are the pictures without the flash, and these are the pictures with flash added. So if you can see the details, the ISO is 80 and 64, which is not exposed for the main model but the highlights, and then you add the flash to compensate for the missing shadows and everything. Again, you can use these flashes for side and mood lighting, and side lighting always gives shape to a particular object and more defines what you want to give, so it gives much more moody effect to the images. So by placing the flashes on the sides, it will give a shape to your subject rather than having a flat image. And then you can have flashes to freeze time. So in the middle pictures, you find that the water is being thrown up, and when you press the shutter, the flash hits on the right hand side, and you can actually minimize time, and you can actually capture the moving water, which is very difficult if you do it in the natural light. Similarly with the fire picture on the left. So to give a much more fierce look, much more dramatic look, you put your flashes or any light source on the left hand side without reflector to give a harsh shadow on the right without any part of the face being visible. So these are the tips and tricks to how to create much more dramatic feel to the image rather than having both the side of the face is visible. Now I'll just quickly show you various multiple flashes setup to get different kind of images. So this is a two light setup where instead of a reflector they use another flash at a low power to give a certain effect, to give that less shadowy effect, and always the camera has been exposed for the highlights. And this is a three light setup where there is another flash being used to create the backdrop color, to create that gradient effect. Instead of a plain backdrop, they have created a gradient effect with the help of the light itself. And then there is four light setup where you use different kind of lights to do different kind of gel effects. There's red, blue, and you can add multiple flashes to give multiple different kind of color effects. Similarly, if you want multiple shadows, you have multiple different sources of light, which you can see on the left hand side to give different kind of colored shadows, and the normal flashes to decompensate for the colored flashes and to actually lighten up the model. And coming to the last part of the workflow is post shoot. So the first part is to select the pictures which you have taken. So the time, you have to take your time to select the pictures, because you don't want to select the out of focus pictures or blurry pictures, or which has movement blur, or the posture is not right, or the expression is not right. So out of the thousands and hundreds of the pictures, you have to choose few pictures which you will post process next. So it's better to select the pictures first and then edit it. If you're doing it in Lightroom, then you can obviously edit all the pictures and see what you want. So my workflow and post processing mainly is goes the basic color correction which I do is it in Lightroom. So all the color correction, chromatic aberration removal and everything is done in Lightroom. And then selective editing which is being done in Photoshop, even the retouching. So in basic color correction in Lightroom which I use is basically the basic tab and the split tone and the tone curve. So these are the three main tabs which I use to edit my pictures in Lightroom at least. And in Photoshop you have a number of tools to edit the pictures which I'll go in detail sometime later. So these are the few pictures which I have edited. So these left ones are the originals, raw files, and the right ones are post processed. So you can see there is this the tones have been corrected and the harsh highlights have been removed from her skin. Similarly, in this picture, there is this increase in the shadow, and then you correct the tones. So skin removal is one thing which not a lot of people do, and it requires time to perfect it. And you can choose any kind of tone to get your kind of mood to your pictures. Like in this picture, I actually removed all the creases and everything from the backdrop to give the spotlight effect to the image. That was done totally in Photoshop. Similarly, you can completely change the mood of the image if you're using Photoshop. So post processing is a powerful thing, but I'll suggest to get the particular tones and exposure right in the camera itself and not always believe and trust or put your all the efforts on post processing rather than clicking the pictures. So these are the few points to remember. Definitely pre-plan your shoots. Check your framing before capturing. Have reference pictures to show your models for poses. And try different angles and try different themes. Be creative with the themes. Don't be nervous to shoot them. Always communicate with the model. Make sure the main attention goes to the subject. So have your settings accordingly. Get the basics exposures and lighting correct in the camera and don't depend on the editing software which I've said beforehand only. And keep practicing, try different shots and keep shooting. That's it. So now we'll go to the review of the pictures which have been sent through the form. So I've selected few pictures, I don't know whose they are, but we'll just quickly go through these pictures. So in this first set of pictures, the left hand side, the leftmost picture, what the disturbing thing was this rod on the right hand side, which could have been removed, and the center framing could have been moved. Like he could have used, she could have used rule of one thirds. Apart from that, the tones and everything of the other two pictures are really nice. I like the postures and the tones of the other two pictures, but in the first picture, he could have removed the rod or the framing could have been done better. Plus, the backdrop could have been more blurred actually. So, a lower f-stop number could have been used. The second picture on the first left hand side picture, either if you're using or if you're shooting street photography, try using a longer zoom lens so that they don't notice you shooting, so that it has a much more candid effect. And then there is too much of distraction with this book, so either you can have cropped the image to give much more attention to his face and everything. The picture on the right, there is too much of stuff going on the image. There's too much of colors and everything. So if you want to reduce these colors and everything, try to selectively retouching this particular image and accentuate this person here, and reduce the exposure relatively of the background and desaturate the image a little bit. uh, Really like the right hand shot a bit. It's perfectly exposed, there's very less distraction, the tonings are perfect. Even in the second picture, toning and everything is done correctly. But if you're showing or something, if you're showing the perspective wise, if you want to show the model standing somewhere or anything, try using a wider frame rather than a closed compact frame, or either you can just go totally close into the frame and just have that two lines of different varying backgrounds with the color difference to give much more better feel to it. Uh, these image, there is too much of distraction in the foreground, so either you could actually reduce the exposure of the background so that there could be much more focus on the actual subject. Similarly, there is too much of disturbance in the foreground in the second image here as well. So we can use much more, we can actually go closer to the foreground of the rod so that they go much more blurred, or use a less f-stop numbers for that. These images, I don't find any kind of subject here. Maybe he was trying to focus on this person, but he's kind of out of the frame, so have to work on the framing here. There's too much of sky in this images, so have to add more foreground to this rather than just the sky. Mm, these images, like I really like the expression and the candid moment which is captured in the right hand side of the picture. Although the lighting and the toning of this image is fairly poor, which you can work on the tones and the expressions and everything of this image. And moving on, the expression and everything is fine, but I think the it has to work a bit on post processing a bit much more. Although on the right side picture there is too much of the foreground, so if it could have been cropped or lesser of the foreground could have been used, it would have been much better. These photos, I like the tones of the first picture very much, but it's kind of a similar thing in the second picture below. But it's fairly underexposed, which could have been done much better if the light was facing a little bit more on the face rather than his neck. So try changing the source of the light more towards the face. The third image is very overexposed background, so try exposing it for the highlights again. I'm telling you. Alright, these pictures, I really like the tones and everything on the kids picture here. There is perfect leading line going on with this path. The tones are correct. Although the image of this old lady could have been much more tighter with much more contrast, and it could have been changed into black and white to give that particular effect on her hair, which the highlights have been shown, which could be shown much more beautifully in black and white rather than colored. The third picture, there is slight motion blur, which could have been intentional, but you could actually use a faster shutter speed and decrease the exposure of the background. Well, you can in this image, the emotion has been captured beautifully, although there's too much of noise behind. So if you want to actually just show her face, her expression, you could actually crop it a little more tighter than this. These are very beautiful, simple portraits. Lightening, everything is fine. So, but like these are very simple shots. So if you want to, like, you can try much more different kind of shots and different kind of lighting to get much more different effects. All right. These shots are like really like the creativity in this shot, but the framing is a little off. Like her hands are being chopped off. Similarly, on the right hand as well. So do keep in mind that don't cut off any body parts or so while framing your images. While the right hand side of the image, I just don't find any kind of subject, so I have to improve on framing. The ideas and everything are nice. So I think that's about it. So if you guys have any questions or anything related to this topic, anything, I'll be answering it now. So if you have any questions, just drop down in the chat so that I could answer. Guys, any questions? Thoughts on environmental portraits? Well, environmental portraits. See, this environment portraits are some of the themes which are like coming up right now. Like there are so many influencers which are clicking pictures with the garbage and everything. So it's a like really good way to come up with mostly environmental portraits. And so if it's difficult to actually incorporate both fashion and environment both in one go, but it's always a new concept and it will, I think, it's a lot more trending right now, which it was before because of the current conditions and all. So I think if you want to go for environmental portraits, you can actually try it will grab a lot more attention than usual portraits because it's always good to have a theme or any component in mind rather than just blatantly going with any kind of theme or so. What exactly do you do? Okay. Skin touching in Photoshop, there are two, three methods which you can actually follow. One is using a clone stamps tool to actually clone your good side of the skin and just place it on the skin which you want to actually correct. So you can remove blemishes and everything from that. The larger blemishes you can actually remove through just the patch tool as well. And if you want much more intense and extensive work, so you can use frequency separation. You can Google it, search it on YouTube or anything for the relevant videos or anything, or maybe just ask me later. I'll just teach you guys. And how do you come with certain poses? Okay, certain poses. So it's like I can come up with poses right now because I've done so many shoots, I guess. But if you're starting and if you are stuck with poses and everything, uh, do look to the reference pictures and everything. That's why the mood board is there. You create the mood board, you get an idea what kind of shots people have, poses which people have done already. So using that, you can tell your model to pose in the similar fashion and you know help her out, or you know you only guide her through the poses and everything to get much more better shots. So do your researches, find the reference pictures, send the reference pictures to your model, then you can communicate through them and actually get good and better poses than before. And always keep practicing. And the more you practice, the more poses you'll get. First shoot, you'll make a mistake, but then in the second, third shoot, you will always try to rectify those mistakes in the poses or anything. When shooting outdoors, have you ever used? Uh, when shooting outdoors, I usually use a flash for filling light, unless and until the lighting conditions are perfect and I don't want the use of flash. So if I'm shooting outdoors, I try to compensate the highlights and the shadows both. So either I use that LED video lights which I have, or I have few light sources, a smaller one which I use, which is known as Lume Cube. So you can actually use those. Those are pretty powerful lights, similar to LED video lights. So you can use those light source and you can use gels to have a different color tone to your image and use it with natural light. Good places to shoot in portraits in Manipal. Uh, good places to shoot. You can always depend on the theme of your concept or theme of the shoots. But if you want green, lush environment, you can always go to Baba's Point or End Point or that kind of road. Or if you want more sophisticated environmental thing, few shots I've taken was the chemical block in the MIT campus itself. Plus, you can always just scout for the places, roam around, and you find something. Any suggestions on studio photography? Studio photography. See, if you start working with one flash first, if you get to use one flash or any, if you want to try with first, try go with just normal artificial source of lighting, a flash or anything. Try capturing those with normal pictures with it. Then you can move on to flashes and everything. Try go with first one flashes first and get master the one flash studio setup first. If you don't master the one flash setup first, you can't really go to two lights or three lights or whatever, because I still use one light setup. I haven't moved on to two light setup yet. I've already answered good places for photography. You can have Endpoint, you can have Baba's Point, you have so many restaurants, you have Proper Top, you have, what was it? So many places. You have Hideout and different places. Hashtag. Any flash recommendations? Instagram ID. Instagram ID is Prekshit Satyarthi, and do follow the photography club as well, which has organized the shoot, organized a particular workshop, and I hope there are more workshops coming up next. Flash recommendations will be, I personally use Godox V860, the second one, the second generation actually. It's a horseshoe flash, which I've shown in the picture before. So these are the flashes. It's not exactly cheap. It's around 7 to 8K when I bought it, but it's a pretty good flash. Really good. The power is really good. So you can have, and then you can actually change the range of the beam of the flash as well, from 14 mm to 200 mm. So you can have different variation of flash light beams, or the spread. You can actually control the spread of the light. So it's a pretty good flash, and you'll always need a trigger with your external flashes, which is, I think you can have 5K or something, 2 3K. Any other questions? So yeah, go with the Godox flashes. It's cheaper, and maximum of the people are using Godox. So if you get a Godox flash And if you later on the future, if you want to upgrade, you can always use Godot flashes so that you can always sync the multiple flashes. Alright guys, thank you for your time. Thank you for attending this workshop. If you have any more questions or anything, do contact me on my Instagram page. Feel free to drop a text if you have any more doubts or if you want to review any more pictures or anything. Feel free to contact me if you have any more questions. Thank you for attending, guys.